Hello, I'm Eliza. In this video, I will introduce you to a method called Stop and Think Note-Taking. This method will help you understand and remember any text you are reading. And the method is very simple. As you read the paragraph, stop from time to time and think what you've understood. Write a note about it. You can write your notes in your own language. The notes are for you to understand the text and to use later. Then, after each paragraph, stop again and look at your notes from that paragraph. Think, what is this paragraph about? Write down your notes on the whole paragraph. When you finish reading the whole text, look at all your notes and think, what does the writer want to tell us in this text? Write down your notes on the whole text. Now we can begin looking at our text. First, let's look at the text to see how long it is. This text is 1 page long, and there are only 3 short paragraphs. That is not long. We can do this quickly. Now we will do some pre-reading. We will look at everything that's around the text. Title, sentences under the title, translated words on the bottom, and the source. Let's first look at the title, Dull and Boring. Here's what they mean. But is this article about something dull and boring? I hope not. Let's read the information under the title. When the 2 towns, Dull, Scotland, and Boring, Oregon, became sister cities, it was anything but dull or boring. So Dull and Boring are actually names of towns, and the text tells us that they are anything but, which means they are not dull or boring. This is funny. The text also tells us that Dull and Boring are sister cities. What are sister cities? They are probably cities that are connected with each other, related to each other in some way. We should wait and see what the text tells us about sister cities. We can even write our first note. Dull and Boring are sister cities, and they are not dull and boring. Let's write not boring. Now, let's read the first paragraph. This is a tale of 2 cities, Dull in Scotland and Boring in Oregon, USA. They were both humorously paired to be sister cities based on their towns' names. Due to the media attention and the increased tourism, these towns are now anything but dull and boring. Let's stop for a moment. All this information feels familiar. This is what we read at the top of the page. Let's just write a note. Dull and Boring became sister cities because their names sound funny together. We also have some new information. Attention of the media and more tourism. Okay, let's continue. Boring has a population of about 8,000 residents, and Dull is a village of only 84 residents. Imagine the effect of tourism and cultural exchange programs on the small Scottish village of Dull. But Dull and Boring are just one example of cities around the world that are connecting and building relationships that both partners can enjoy and benefit from. What's the message here that the writer wants us to understand? First, Dull is very small. Let's write a note. Dull is small. It probably enjoys being a sister city. Another point, for the first time the writer mentions other cities. It looks like there are many cities around the world that enjoy and benefit from being sister cities, and Dull and Boring are one example. Let's write, many cities around the world enjoy and benefit from being sister cities. Now that we've written our notes for this paragraph, let's stop and think. We have 4 notes. Where's the writer going with this? It seems that we're going to find out more about sister cities, and the writer is using Dull and Boring as an interesting example of sister cities. It looks like the whole paragraph is an example. Let's write that. Example of sister cities. Okay, let's keep reading. Remember, if anything is not clear, you can always go back and read it again. The idea of sister cities became popular in 1956 when U.S. President Eisenhower created an organization called Sister Cities International. Okay, So now the text is getting serious. We're getting some history here. Let's read just a little bit more to see that we have the right idea before taking a note. The organization focused on pairing cities around the world as a way to heal the wounds of World War II. The goal was to encourage trade and tourism to promote better understanding of different cultures. Let's stop here and take a note. I feel like we've understood something, and I'd like to write down before I forget. What's the text telling us? It's telling us about the history of sister cities. We also see that the text is telling us about the goals of sister cities. When we look at the goals, we also see that there's an idea here that we already saw above, that the goal of sister cities is to encourage trade and tourism. The writer already mentioned in the first paragraph that dull would enjoy tourism from boring. If it's repeated, it may be important. Let's add to our previous note. Goals of sister cities encourage trade and tourism. Let's continue. Over the following 70 years, cities continued to form partnerships based on similarities in size and demographics, shared history, and related industries. Sometimes, however, the partnerships between sister cities doesn't last. For example, Prague recently ended its pairing with St. Petersburg because of Russia's military invasion of Ukraine. So far, we have only read positive things about sister cities, but now we saw an example of a partnership that did not last, meaning the partnership did not survive. Let's take a note. Some partnerships don't last. Now we have our notes for the second paragraph. Let's stop and think. Let's look over our notes and think what this paragraph is all about. We see that the paragraph gives us background information about sister cities, like history and goals. Let's go on to the third and last paragraph. So, are sister cities a good idea? The dull and boring residents seem to think so. We're back to dull and boring. Seem to think so means that they seem to think it's a good idea. So, where is the writer going with this? It looks like the writer is going to show us that sister cities are a good idea, at least for dull and boring. Let's write a note. Sister cities are a good idea for dull and boring. Let's continue. 38 boring residents attended a city meeting on the subject and voted to extend the hand of boring fellowship to dull. Then they immediately got to work on the boring and dull t-shirts that would help advertise the pairing. Emma Bertels, who lives in Dull, was amazed that the pairing took off like it has. It all happened so quickly, she says. And now we each hold special festivals to celebrate our sister city, with local musicians performing in each other's cities. Boring resident Jim Hart says he looks forward to hosting some Dull visitors. Who knew dull and boring could be so exciting? What kind of information are we getting in the rest of this paragraph? It looks like a lot of activities. The residents of Dull and Boring are making t-shirts, celebrating at music festivals, and visiting each other. Let's put that into a note. T-shirts, music festivals, and visiting each other. Now let's stop and think. What is this paragraph about? The paragraph began with a question. So, are sister cities a good idea? Based on the paragraph, we can say that it is a good idea. We see that Dull and Boring are a success story. Let's write our note. Dull and Boring are a success story. Now that we read the whole text, let's look at all our notes to see the big picture. What is the writer trying to tell us in this text? The writer is showing us that sister cities can be a good idea by discussing Dull and Boring as a successful example. let's write a note. Sister cities can be a good idea, and dull and boring are a successful example. So, what did we do here? As we read, we took notes of what we understood. Then, at the end of each paragraph, we took time to stop and think, look at our notes, and understand the overall message of the paragraph. In the end, we looked at all our notes and asked ourselves, what's the overall message of the text? If you'd use this method, you would have a text that you can understand and use.